Hello and welcome to the Friday wrap up here on Landy's Crypto Corner. Today is April 4th, 2025, and we're looking at Bitcoin today on the daily. We will look at the weekly as well, and we're going to acknowledge a few things that are occurring in traditional markets as Bitcoin has shown relative strength. And the very first thing that we're going to do is go ahead and take a look at traditional markets. And this is just to provide some context because there's a few narratives floating around out there that I disagree with. So by the end of the daily here for Dow, we got a nice big old expansive dump off outside of its range lows that it was holding. So it started to lose it, rallied to a retest and a gap fill from back here that was technically already filled, but found resistance right in there around this lower high, right around the low side structure. Tried to hold the lows again, right here, closing back inside of this for a couple candles here before dumping off. And let's go ahead and call it what it is. It's a crash. And it's not really that concerning. So you're going to hear why probably more next week on Monday when I'll do a longer video. But we got a 21%. Oh no, it's a bear market. It's not like we haven't seen this. Last year we had a 15%. Last time that we had tariff, like really big tariff talk, there's the bear market at 37. But one of the bigger things that I like to kind of call out is this is February into March of 2020. Nice 33 days to find the low for NASDAQ here. But prior to that, tariff talks really were ramping up into 2017 into the highs. Now, crypto markets topped. Traditional markets actually found their lows pretty quickly. After about 14 bars, it actually found the low, made a new all-time high, and even retested that low before marching on throughout the rest of 2018 to find another higher high. And then we had a big old crash, 23% in NASDAQ over here. Now, it took about 84 days to find the low, so just shy of 3 months to find the low. And this was essentially tariff talk, into more some tariff talk, into implementation of tariffs and a bunch of other economic stuff that was going on at the time. Big crash, took about a quarter to find the low, and what did it do? Marched right back to new all-time highs. Then we had I don't know if they still censor on YouTube. So we had the big crash March 2020, but we were already seeing signs of weakness. Rallied after losing structure, rallied, failed, dumped 30%. Took 33 days to find that low before coming right back up. Nice V recovery, making new all-time highs. Obviously, that's when Bitcoin finally went back and retested its prior all-time highs and stuff like that. But Bitcoin was relatively weak versus traditional markets in that sense. And we could go and do this all day through SPY and stuff like that. I just like to point out, like, time to find a low. Is this a bear market? We'll get into on Monday. You're going to hear bear market. But again, last time that we were going through like tariff stuff like this, we had a big, basically a correction that lasted about a quarter. Is this one deep already at 44 days? Yes, but we're also moving very quickly. We'll see how this kind of plays out coming into next week. Now, the relative strength that Bitcoin has shown against NASDAQ and, of course, SPY, which raced down to nearly 20%. We're at 17.64% down from an all-time high. And, could this make for a reversal? I think it's going to take a little bit of time to recover and actually make a new all-time high again. But, how long to find the low is kind of where we're going to be kind of tracking. Does it track with like what we saw in 18? Or do we go full bear market with macro lower highs or something like that? So that's what we'd be watching out for next. And fears of a recession are not a recession. So people saying we're in a recession are front running that narrative, just like they're front running the bear market narrative. And typically, like in 2018, it technically was a quote unquote bear market because it crashed 20% or more. But it took a quarter to find the low, and then it was right back to new all-time highs by the end of the year. So, inside of the year or something along those lines, coming into 19, right? And consistently making new all-time highs, even coming into 2020. So was back on track. The actual economy in terms of markets were strong, and of course the economy was stronger at that point too. Before we had that March of 2020 event, which was quick. If you weren't on the ball on the way down, you missed out. That's for sure. Now Bitcoin showing relative strength. Just understand that the traditional markets have only just recently broken their lows. Bitcoin already broke below its lows and already had its big move down. It's a 30% correction. So, we saw a 30% correction last year, 73,835 to $49,000. This is another 30% correction. Does it hold? Well, maybe this is an indicator, right? It moved early. Why did it move early? Well, it moved early because we had a lot of market participants, including hedge funds, who were bidding price up post-election that broke us out of the prior range. In fact, this was the range high spike coming into the election. This was on October 29th, right? And a nice uptrend here. We got a little bit of a compression coming into election day, and then we set the low and expanded out of that prior range. So this was running right back to that high of the range that was at 73,835, just shy of it. And got the expansion up, formed the range up here. What was happening during that time period? Well, it didn't matter who was going to be elected. They were already planning to run price up and then set some nice higher lows and expand out of there. What was occurring in this was a lot of ETF, spot ETF buying, and then shorts opening on the other side of that all the way up. We got the nice double top on a close up here. We talked about that on Wednesday. And once the arb trade between the two got squeezed, came down to support, they unwound the spot side of the position, kept on the short side, get some closing of shorts. Coming into the quarterly close here, and then now it's we await kind of what might be on the table next. Now we have started to see quite a lot of buying. We saw a nice green day, relatively speaking, considering that traditional markets were dumping off. But, in this case, crypto was the leading indicator, right? So, no, I don't think they're decoupling. I think in the long-term timeframes, Bitcoin will eventually decouple from traditional markets, but I'm not willing to call this a decoupling event. And it's just a matter of what priority positions were they, exiting to readjust later. First it was crypto, and then obviously now it's traditional markets. So it's all about staging your trades and stuff like that. Now, not too much to report on this front. Bitcoin is still going sideways. We got our move down that we talked about. Let's see. What am I even doing here? It's been a long day. Been on a lot of spaces, meeting with a lot of people, and behind the scenes, and having a lot of good conversations. So you'll have to forgive me if I'm a little discombobulated. All right. So we saw the rally to overhead resistance. We've talked about that. The 88.8 to $89,000. It's this higher low swing right here, which is right on our 1.168. We'll take a look at in just a moment. And again, that's not 1.618, it's 168 or 16.8% above the prior cycle high at $69,000. In this case, as I had mentioned, we were moving from compression to expansion and back into compression now. So we did get our Thursday sweep of the low turned into a nice green candle. Hasn't quite set this low on a close, but the swing low is confirmed. So we got two nice swing lows here. If they hold up, great. Still in the bearish half of the bands though. And again, it's more bear bias below $85,000. I've talked about this a lot. And in this case, if we're gonna see expansion down to the actual lows and possibly lower, we're looking at, running these lows right here. So right around that lower second standard deviation. Again, it's still right around $81,000. So not much has changed in that regard. If we start to see closes under there, if we haven't already tested down further to, $80,000, somewhere around this low right here, then I would be looking for a test down to $80,000. Anywhere below there, I'm looking for 78 to the actual low at 76,555 on expansion. If it does break, then we're looking for either a swing in lower term timeframes or actually to try and head down towards that prior accumulation high side zone. To the upside, like I said, got to break, essentially call it 89 at this low, which is also the weekly swing higher low, or the last big weekly swing higher low in this case. And then it's got a lot of work to do. So let's go ahead and turn on the local support and resistance chart here so that we can visualize this. Essentially get above the basis, and especially above $85,000, the first bearish candle post expansion out of that prior range. And that would be good enough to probably try to rally back up towards the upper second standard deviation. But again, we need to see closes above there, recover of the red zone at, you can call it just 89. It's 88,700. We've seen the swings towards it. Get closes above there, and we can start looking to expansion into resistance here at 92. Above there, we need a weekly reclaim of this weekly higher low close open at 93.5. And I'm still bearish below the twin tower candles, which was a retest of the consolidation prior to this lower low move, right, outside of the range. So we need to see, this retest was a failure. We need to see closes above there at 95. And then, of course, we can start targeting this consolidation somewhere around that $95,000 to $100,000 here. Anywhere above there, we're starting to look back into the 101 to 104 by that 1272, or 27.2% above the prior cycle high. So pretty straightforward stuff. Not much has changed. We'll see what the weekend holds, but let's check on a few other things, and we'll get rid of this this mess that I've made on the chart here so that things can be a little bit cleaner to look at as we check on things like RSI. So, you know, this is a sideways trend right now. Essentially a trendless structure. So, you know, we had a downtrend, right? The trend is your friend until the end of the trend. That particular downtrend has ended. Will it resume? We'll find out soon. But when the trend is unclear, everyone's in fear. And that's still kind of where we're at. So it's about breaking the downtrend at this point. We went into a little bit of an uptrend to retest that overhead resistance, and then even had the nice spike high on Liberation Day. We liberated all those longs right at the resistance because they were long and hard at that resistance. And now, you know, we're talking about on Wednesday, we await the short at support. We got the shorts down at support, and we move back up to kind of the basis band here. So not too much going on. So let's check on RSI and see what is on the table here. If we do set a low here, what's the criteria for setting a low? Well, we got close in the Friday candle. It's still Friday for me, but the Saturday session is open. We will see a low set if I would say, you know, call it $85,000. That's where we would also get another drive of bullish divergence, regular bullish divergence in this case. We also do have a stochastic momentum turn here, and that will stay up as long as Bitcoin is closing above 82,530. Now, of course, if we just see sideways price action or downside price action over the weekend, that number is going to continue to rise and could reset and just turn right back down. That's going to essentially be the lower end tests that I'm talking about, the most recent low. Most recent swing low, probably testing around 81. If it starts testing 80 and dropping below, then we can look that 78 to that lower low of this move thus far at, you know, 76.5 or so. But for right now, momentum is to the upside. We'll see what the weekend holds. Sometimes it's been volatile, sometimes it's not. You know, is there a tweet that comes out? Who knows? I can't predict that. So we'll just follow up on Monday. The criteria is just very, very clear. Let's go ahead and check on the weekly. Weekly is, oh boy, if it sets a nice low here, you know, we do have a low set on the weekly. And this low is coming off of a continuation driver, hidden bullish divergence up there on RSI. Now, of course, this is a lower high close with a higher high swing to lower low. So this is a trend reversal setup on the weekly. So that's where, you know, if we do not just get continuation to the downside, let's say this is the lower high, that would be, you know, that would imply continuation to the downside at 88,800, right? Plus multiple tests into that area. But if it can hold its shit together and set a low above, you know, around 88,800 or $89,000, that would be a lower low set on top of another lower low here. Or one, it would set this more concretely as a lower low. And then we just have to be aware of possible lower high runs or swings of the high here. So possible lower highs, in and around $100,000, we'll just call it just for the sake of argument, or a swing of the higher high that fails to close above. That would be your lower high, and likely either lead to more consolidation or possible continuation on any downside moves. So, and of course, if we haven't seen the test from there, then we could always look for the test down here. Now, we do have a slight bit of expansion of the Bollinger Bands here. Again, closing below 80 would do it on the weekly for expansion, but then it's still only expansion down into the local structure here. We would need to see continuation, close over close, into the high side structure over here to look for more sustained downtrend. I do think that we'd get some real good demand in here, by the way. So definitely at least first pass, and probably even on a weekly. So, something to be aware of to the upside. We just need to see some structure built, solidify this low by actually moving up, and then we'll get a better gauge on whether or not we have more potential. But if it does start to do that, one of the things that I'm watching is this nice big old bullish reset. So one of the things that we do have here, once this low is set on Stoke, meaning we get a Stoke turn on closes above 91,700 or 91.8. You can even call it 92, which is the zone of overhead, 89 to 92K. That's that red zone that I was showing earlier, right? If we did start to see closes above there, that would turn Stoke initially. We would need to see the following week follow through above whatever the pivot was, would likely drop to the lows anyway. So we would need to see continuation, basically, or at least holding that zone for at least an additional week to get a full turn. That would look really good. Why? Because stochastic momentum was higher here, and if it were to set some higher lows, we get a nice big old momentum divergence along with what we already got going on here for RSI. So that would look pretty good. So essentially, I don't know if that's going to happen this weekend or if this just turns into another lower high, but if you do start seeing closes above like 88, 89, that would look pretty good. To go and test further up, even to the basis, which is going to be coming down to this weekly higher low close at 93.5 likely, and maybe even slightly under to 93 or so, if Bitcoin even closes anywhere like this. So just understand that that's kind of going to come right into confluence with a pretty important area overhead as well, provided we continue to see this hold. And, continuation is just below 80. Go test the lows, probably get expansion lower if it doesn't just swing in and try to bounce out. And then we probably come in and test the high side structures here. 65 at this higher high to the high at 73.35. That's big old weekly area of interest. Not much really happening there. If it continues to dump out in traditional markets, do we see more of an unwind in the crypto markets? Who knows? Now let's quickly just take a look at ETH and Solana, because I know that there's probably a few of you that would like to know where they're at, and not much has changed. Nice little swing of the low here on the daily. Let's take a look at the weeklies though. Let's just concentrate on the weeklies here. Nice little swing of that low on the daily. Can it set a low? 2100 would look great, even better above 2150, but realistically that daily at 2320 is where we want to see things kind of end up. Not going to rehash that. Let's look at momentum on the weekly. Nice move down in the extreme zone. It can stay down here longer than most can stay patient though, so understand closes above 2268 are needed, and again it needs to break resistance like I was talking about on Wednesday. Next one is going to be Solana. We'll take a look at Solana. Solana is right on its main supports. It got a nice little dip down. I wouldn't want to see closures here, because much like ETH, once you start closing down here, it's might be get some more tests on a legitimate basis down towards $100. Still expansion to the downside, still reading as expansion to the downside, so just be aware that it could get nasty if it closes like this. But if it recovers above 125, then maybe this nice little double swing down here looks pretty juicy for possibly being a low. Of course, it needs to close above 147 here, so about 150 by the lower first to start working its way back up for a nice bounce towards 169 to 170. Nice. And where's momentum at? This is actually nice and deep in the oversold zone, 153. So again, we got to see, if it can hold the low essentially, and especially the wick low at 112, that would look pretty good. Especially if it can continue to like hold this area, even if it kind of waffles around, to at least try to gun for that 145, get a stoke momentum turn and test further up. Again, this is a trend break, so I would be expecting lower highs, and then if this is the low, you want to see it hold on any subsequent moves back down, higher low, equal low structure from there, and start building out some healthy structure. It's going to take a little while, I think. I suspect it's going to take a little while. Go through a reaccumulation. If it were to V recover and go right back to the highs, it's over. Sorry. That's an exit pump at that point. So you want to see nice healthy structure during a recovery phase. So that's going to be it for today. I will follow up with everybody on Monday for Macro Mondays, and I think it's going to be a very interesting one because by the time I record, it's after market close, right? So we'll see if we get follow through in traditional markets. We'll see if things start to fall apart in crypto markets, and then or if we get a bounce on the traditional market side that maybe provides for a bounce in the crypto market side. And pay close attention to Bitcoin, because where Bitcoin goes, so are your altcoins and meme coins. All right. You have a wonderful weekend. And of course, have a wonderful morning, afternoon, and evening, no matter where you are in the world. Please trade safe. And of course, as always, stay safe. With all of that said, Landy out. Take care.